Hey everyone, welcome back to this awesome crypto space. Now, I'm not saying awesome as in I'm awesome. I'm saying it as in you're awesome. You guys are great. I get so many amazing comments and questions, and I do believe without a doubt that this channel has become a great community and is becoming a really great space for everyone to join. As long as you're into the new Web3, blockchain, and crypto, it doesn't really matter if you're new to the game or old. You will enjoy this space and the community it is growing to be. And with that said, today we're talking about a company that's been making serious noise in the Bitcoin world lately, and that is Metaplanet. Now, if you haven't heard of them before, don't worry. Just a year ago, most people hadn't heard anything. But fast forward to today, and this Japanese company is being compared to MicroStrategy, with some even calling it Asia's Bitcoin play. Here's the crazy part. Metaplanet wasn't even a crypto company to begin with. They actually started out in the hospitality business, running hotels. But instead of fading away when that industry struggled, they completely reinvented themselves. Now they're going all in on Bitcoin, buying thousands of coins, raising billions of dollars, and openly aiming to own as much as 1% of the total Bitcoin supply by 2027. That's an insane goal, but if they pull it off, it would make them one of the biggest players in the entire Bitcoin space. And it's not just about buying Bitcoin and sitting on it. Metaplanet is building new financial products around their holdings, things like Bitcoin-backed equity and yield instruments, which could reshape how Japanese companies think about crypto in their balance sheets. Basically, they're not just stacking sats, they're trying to build an entirely new financial model around Bitcoin. So in this video, we're going to break it all down, how Metaplanet went from hotels to hodling, what their Bitcoin strategy looks like so far, why their stock price has been going crazy, and what this could mean for the future of corporate Bitcoin adoption in Asia and beyond. Metaplanet's story goes back more than 2 decades. The company was originally founded in Japan in 1999 under a completely different name. Back then, it had nothing to do with Bitcoin or even technology. Its focus was mainly on running hotels and operating in the hospitality sector. For years, the business stayed in that lane, but over time, things started to shift. The hospitality industry faced challenges, especially during the pandemic, and Metaplanet wasn't exactly thriving. The company needed a new direction. That turning point came in 2023. Metaplanet rebranded and announced a bold change in strategy. Instead of sticking with a struggling business model, they landed fully into Bitcoin, inspired by MicroStrategy's playbook in the US. Metaplanet adopted a Bitcoin-first philosophy. They saw BTC not as a short-term speculative bet, but as a long-term reserve asset, something that could protect the company's balance sheet from inflation while also positioning it for future growth. That shift completely transformed how investors and the market viewed Metaplanet. Almost overnight, it went from being an overlooked hotel operator to one of the most talked about Bitcoin-focused companies in Asia. Metaplanet didn't waste any time after its pivot. The company kicked off its Bitcoin buying spree in early 2024. At first, the purchases were relatively small. They were testing new waters, building a foundation, and signaling to the market that they were serious. By 2025, things got much bigger. The company started scaling up its acquisitions, announcing new purchases almost every month. Investors began to notice, and so did the Bitcoin community. In July 2025, Metaplanet made headlines when it scooped up more than 2,200 Bitcoin in a single week. Not long after, they added another 797 Bitcoin, pushing their total holdings past 16,000 coins. That was a defining moment. People realized Metaplanet wasn't just another company dabbling in Bitcoin. They were building one of the largest corporate treasuries in the world. August brought even more aggressive moves. On August 4th, they bought 463 Bitcoin. A week later, another 518 Bitcoin. And then on August 18th, they dropped the hammer with a massive purchase of 775 Bitcoin at an average price of just under $120,000. per coin. That brought their total stash to 18,888 Bitcoin. For perspective, that's more Bitcoin than almost every other public company in Asia combined. The only bigger player globally is MicroStrategy, and Metaplanet is clearly trying to catch up. What's even more interesting is their cost basis. On average, Metaplanet has been buying Bitcoin at around $101,000 to $102,000 per coin. With Bitcoin currently trading well above that level, they're already sitting on billions in unrealized gains. The results of Metaplanet's Bitcoin strategy started showing up fast. By the second quarter of 2025, the company reported a huge turnaround in its numbers. They posted a net income of more than 11 billion yen, which is about 75 million US dollars. Just a year earlier, they were staring at 5 billion yen loss. That's a massive shift in such a short time. Their ordinary profit also skyrocketed to 17.4 billion yen, or roughly $118 million. For a company that was once struggling to stay relevant, those numbers turned a lot of heads. It wasn't just profits that grew. Revenue jumped by more than 40% compared to the previous quarter. Gross profit followed closely behind with a similar surge. This made it clear that the Bitcoin focus wasn't just helping the balance sheet. It was actually building momentum across the business. Investors reacted in a big way. Metaplanet's shareholder base exploded, going from a relatively small group to over 180,000 shareholders by mid-2025. That's a 350% increase since they started stacking Bitcoin. Naturally, the stock price followed the hype. By the middle of the year, Metaplanet stock had surged nearly 190%, easily outperforming some of Japan's top indexes like the Topix Core 30. For many investors, it suddenly became one of the hottest plays in the market. But the excitement wasn't just about the profits, it was about the vision. Investors weren't buying Metaplanet because they thought it was a normal company. They were buying into the story of a Japanese firm trying to build an empire around Bitcoin. Metaplanet's Bitcoin buying spree doesn't come cheap. To keep up its aggressive plans, the company has been raising free capital, and in June 2025, they announced a massive equity program worth about $5.4 billion. The plan was to issue more than 500 million new shares over 2 years, giving them the firepower to keep stacking Bitcoin on every dip. Then in August, they doubled down again. This time, the company laid out plans to raise another $3.7 billion. The goal was simple but bold. Keep buying Bitcoin until they own at least 1% of the entire supply by 2027. That's roughly 210,000 coins. But here's where Metaplanet gets creative. Instead of just selling stock or taking loans, they've been experimenting with brand new Bitcoin-backed financial products. One of their biggest moves is something called Metaplanet Prefs. These are perpetual preferred shares backed directly by Bitcoin. Investors get a steady yield around 6%, while Metaplanet keeps adding Bitcoin to its reserves. This is groundbreaking in Japan's financial market. It basically introduces a Bitcoin-backed yield curve, something the country hasn't seen before. And it positions Metaplanet not just as a Bitcoin holder, but as a financial innovator. They're also exploring other instruments like zero-interest bonds secured with Bitcoin, which shows how far they're willing to push the envelope. For Metaplanet, Bitcoin isn't just digital gold. It's the foundation for an entirely new kind of balance sheet. Metaplanet's bold approach has already made waves across Asia. By mid-2025, it had become the largest public Bitcoin holder in the entire region. Globally, it now ranks among the top 10 corporate Bitcoin treasuries. And guys, that is huge. It's a huge shift. Until recently, most of the big Bitcoin moves were coming from the US, with MicroStrategy leading the way. Metaplanet has changed that narrative by showing that Asian companies can play just as big in the Bitcoin game. The company's innovative financial products are also setting new standards. Their Bitcoin-backed equity and preferred shares are more than just funding tools. They're proof that Bitcoin can be used as the base layer for corporate finance. This is important for Japan, where traditional finance is often cautious and slow to adopt change. Metaplanet is pushing the boundaries by blending Bitcoin with mainstream financial instruments. It's creating a model that other companies in Asia might follow. The ripple effect is already clear. Investor confidence in corporate Bitcoin adoption has grown, and Metaplanet is now seen as a case study in how to use Bitcoin not just as a hedge, but as a growth engine. In short, they've gone from a small, overlooked company to a trendsetter, and their success could inspire more companies across Asia to explore Bitcoin as part of their long-term strategy. Now, of course, it's not all smooth sailing for Metaplanet. Their strategy comes with some risks that investors need to think about. The first concern is dilution. Since 2022, the number of shares has exploded from around 57 million to more than 450 million. Every time they issue new shares to raise money, existing shareholders own a smaller slice of the company. That's the trade-off for funding such an aggressive Bitcoin strategy. Another issue is valuation. Analysts have pointed out that Metaplanet's stock trades at a much higher multiple compared to peers like MicroStrategy. At one point, its net asset value multiple was almost double. That raises the question of whether investors are paying too much for the hype. Then there's volatility. The stock has already seen huge swings, jumping almost 200% earlier in the year before dropping nearly 40% from its peak. Technical indicators have even flashed sell and strong sell signals in recent weeks. That shows how quickly investor sentiment can flip. And of course, the biggest risk is Bitcoin itself. Metaplanet's entire future is tied to the price of Bitcoin. If Bitcoin keeps climbing, the strategy looks genius. But if Bitcoin crashes, their balance sheet and stock price will take a massive hit. For now, investors seem willing to accept those risks in exchange for the upside. But it's clear that Metaplanet's path forward won't be without turbulence. Looking ahead, Metaplanet has one very clear goal. They want to own 1% of all Bitcoin by 2027. That means around 210,000 coins. It's an ambitious target, but if they keep raising billions through equity programs and Bitcoin-backed products, it's not out of reach. Every new purchase gets them closer to that milestone. If they succeed, Metaplanet won't just be a Japanese company holding Bitcoin, they'll be one of the biggest Bitcoin players in the world, second only to giants like MicroStrategy. That kind of presence could completely reshape how Asian companies approach crypto. There's also the potential ripple effect in Japan's financial markets. By introducing Bitcoin-backed shares and preferred equity, Metaplanet could pave the way for new products across the country. It's possible that in a few years, Bitcoin-backed finance will be a normal part of Japan's capital markets, with Metaplanet leading the charge. The big catalyst, of course, will always be the price of Bitcoin. If Bitcoin keeps pushing to new highs, Metaplanet's strategy gets stronger with every step. If the market turns against them, they'll face pressure. Either way, the company has positioned itself as one of the most important corporate players in Bitcoin's story. And that alone makes their journey worth watching closely. So that's the story of Metaplanet, a Japanese company that went from running hotels to building one of the biggest Bitcoin treasuries in the world. In just a short time, they've transformed themselves into Asia's leading corporate Bitcoin holder. And their ambition doesn't stop there. They've already proven that Bitcoin can flip a struggling company into a profitable powerhouse. They've shown that creative financial tools like Bitcoin-backed preferred shares can open new doors in traditional markets. And they've made it clear they're not slowing down until they reach their target of 1% of all Bitcoin that exists. But here's the big question. Can they really pull it off? Can Metaplanet keep raising billions? keep buying thousands of coins and handle the risks that come with betting their future on Bitcoin? Or will volatility, dilution, and investor doubts catch up to them before they reach the finish line? That's what makes this story so fascinating. It's not just about the company, it's about whether Bitcoin can truly become the backbone of corporate finance in Asia and beyond. Now, I want to hear from you guys. Let's discuss this. Do you think Metaplanet's Bitcoin strategy is genius or reckless? Would you invest in this company, or is it just too risky? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the biggest stories in crypto. And stay tuned, because in our next videos coming up, we'll be comparing Metaplanet strategy to MicroStrategy to see how these two Bitcoin giants stack up against each other. Thank you so much for watching, you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.